So this was the previous live. Whether or not I'm going to convert that into a video or not, I don't think so. I may have said some wonderful and insightful things, but I'll have a look. I'll play it back. I always have to play them back just in case I say something that's not right. Anyway, so that was on the dodgy paper. This is like a strange. It's almost like it's closer to tissue paper than it is to cartridge. Weird. So it wouldn't take a line, as I said earlier. If you watch the video, I was talking about, the density factor. Being able to create the range, because that's one of the critical things for me, is being able to master or muster. It's probably the word. A range of tones. I don't. If it's too grey, this is why I don't like graphite. I think if it's too grey, I like the the range aspect of it. I like, as I showed you this morning, I like this density without any effort. That's the thing as well. I don't want to have to work at it. And as I'm gradually working at it, as I was trying with this one, it's affecting the paper and it's changing the marks. So that's one of the things that I think about with mediums. If it becomes a labor to make it do what you want to do, chances are you're going to lose the spontaneity because it becomes a labor. So a lot of these are, you can see the tonal qualities were achieved quite easily, and so that's really what. And it's the paper that did it, not the not the charcoal, because it's the same charcoal I always use. It's just hazelwood that I make myself. Anyway, so I'm going to do another one now, and we'll see if it works on it better. But this is, you can see in the difference in colour of the paper. You can see that just about. That's cream anyway, and that's this white. And it's also there's a different kind of spring to it, Whereas this stuff is, just, as I say, you can see it's quite limp. Anyway, right. So, yeah, I was talking about this morning about this, the concept of sharing. So I don't know about you, but everywhere I look now on Facebook, everything in my timeline is a course. And one just popped up now, a gouache course. Do you want to paint in gouache? And it's just where do you start? I mean, I don't need to go on a course. It's painting gouache, I'll figure it out. It's that kind of thing. But there are people that would benefit, obviously. So I'm just trying to get there. Sometimes the end of the wood has got some kind of growth spurt in it or whatever, and it suddenly changes its consistency. Yeah, so I think that's always been me. If it's a medium or something that I need to know, I'll find out. But yeah, there are courses everywhere, and I'm desperate. I mean, I've done courses. Don't really sell many courses, but so let me just get everything where it should be, and I'll start to. See, this is the difference. I'm hardly touching this paper, and these marks are appearing very, very easily. See, that impacts on everything. So if it's possible to make marks with no effort, it means that the nuances of tone that you might want to recreate, if you want to make it a much more subtle thing, it's not going to be difficult to do those things. It's just, I mean, obviously it's down to your dexterity, if that's the right word, in terms of whether you can manage to make the marks with such a delicate fashion. But that's not really an issue. You just get good at doing that. And the issue is that it makes the process of trying to recreate tonal values and shape, give form to shapes and capture light and all the other stuff that we try and do, makes that process a lot easier when it flows. It's like I often watch people paint in oils and think about how the paint flows from their brush. And I mean, when I paint, it's like you've seen me doing it. It's like just dragging a stick, So, but it flows, and I admire that. I'm jealous of their equipment, because it must be that. It must be the equipment they use. For me, it's just the cheapest equipment I can find, and obviously that's the reason why I struggle. But the ease of doing this, and I've been banging on about this for a few weeks now, after the oil pastel stuff, because of how demanding oil pastel was or is for me, and I hate it when medium demand you must do it this way. And I was talking about that this morning with the watercolor thing and the processes and the doing it right thing. But it just gets in the way. You know what I mean? I don't know why I'm like that. I think I was talking to Harrison the other night, my youngest son. I think it's this, lazy and impatient thing. But we were saying this because he's gone through the same kind of thing as me with the realism stuff, and he's sculpting at the moment. And we were talking about realism and going to great lengths to recreate realistic things. And the phrase he used, and I echo the same thing. I just can't be bothered with all that paraphernalia, if that's the right way to describe it. And it's not a laziness. I mean, I use that as a flippantly. That's I'm lazy and impatient. Impatient's true, but I'm not lazy, because I wouldn't do as many drawings and every day and all as I do. It's nothing to do with laziness. It's to do with not wanting to focus on things that don't make an awful lot of difference, and try and be laser guided towards what really makes a difference. And that manifests in this appearing to not wanting to make the effort, when really that's the last thing, both of us. I mean, if you see what Harrison does, it's just that effort is, no one would put as much effort into doing what he does. It's staggering. 3 or 4 months at a time, relentless effort. But that's, we were saying that, and then I was talking about the medium thing being a critical factor in all of this. If the medium demands that you must do this, you must do it this way. It doesn't say that, but it's just like it doesn't work unless you do it this way, that kind of thing. Then that's not a medium I want to use, because it's just gonna be about the medium. And I know what'll happen is that if it's like that, if it is the medium demanding, if you're going to do it, you have to do it this way with this medium. I know what'll happen. I'll just become, obsessed with the medium, as I did with watercolor. I said earlier, I got obsessed with the using the medium properly, and as if it made a difference, as if without knowing the stuff. And I see, like this guy this morning, I talked about the watercolorists who never mention. I mean, they're acclaimed and they're successful, and whatever that means, and respected. But they never talk about, when they're doing these little tuition things, these little teaching things, they never talk about pigments. They never talk about the sedimentary and staining and non-staining pigments. They never talk about, and that's all I ever spoke. I mean, I was triggered by Sargent's watercolors. So So, you know, how did he do what he did? I mean, it's not like the watercolors you see now, whereas, you know, they're all sort of outlines that are coloured in kind of watercolors. He drew with watercolor, you know, he drew with the brush. There's a couple of watercolor artists I've seen that say that, but that's what Sargent did, and I was obsessed with that, the drawing with the brush, drawing with the watercolor, and the you know, the way that he created the, you know, the depth within the, and it was because he understood about the, you know, the pigmentation, how it worked. And so that's kind of how I figured it all out. What was so special about Sargent's watercolors was my my inquisition, if you like, my quest. I mean, what's special about it? It was a blooming genius. That's what it was. Plus the fact he'd been doing it since you were like knee high to a grasshopper. So you kind of get good at something when you're doing it for 50 years, don't you? But that aside, I think the if I was to be if I was to get on board with the oil pastels or whatever, I would just be, you know, relentless, and I'd forget about why I really do this. So I try to avoid that, which is why I come back to charcoal. And providing the combinations right, you know, the paper and the charcoal's right, then I can work with it without any obstacles of that stand in the way of me doing what I want to do with it. Which more often than not, it's just draw faces. I'm not, you know, it's nothing. This is not a grand quest other than that. I just want to draw faces. And I'll keep toying with the idea I want to draw figures, but I can never find references for figures, you know, the kind of thing that you see. And other than that, you have to make it up, and I'm rubbish at stuff like that. I can't remember. I can't draw from memory. I can only draw what I see, which, as I've said many times, I used to think it was a problem, that, but it's what it is, you know. You know, and I get things like Loomis is made for people to draw from, help people draw from memory and all that, but I don't know. They just end up looking like mannequins, and I'm not. Again, the thing about portraits for me is the life aspect of it. I just want to capture life, and which seems strange, me drawing from photographs all the time, but which is why I focus on the emotional side of things and try and recreate the you know, the emotions within a face, within a subject. I'm drawing this lady because of it's all too easy to start drawing old men, you know, beardy old men, and it's not really I was going to say it's not a challenge. It is a challenge, but it's not a challenge in the same way that drawing a beautiful woman or you know, a female. I think that, but when I say challenge, I don't mean challenge as in challenge. I mean engagement. I think engagement with the subject is probably, and continual engagement is probably the number one thing for me. So I'm not really. This is why I don't like the medium thing, because it disconnects me from the engagement with the subject, because I'm too busy worrying about whether or not the oil pastels are doing what they're supposed to do, that kind of thing. So again, that's why as I said, I struggle with mediums that demand that I consider or learn or whatever. I'm more interested in my response and than I am in the way I respond. The way I respond is just simply driven by my emotional connection to it. It's not really a considered thing. I think probably that's a number one thing that I think that I was talking this morning about the problem with considered responses. I've done that with those two things this week. Those two oil pastels this week. Considered responses. Just takes me back to illustration and design. To a lot of people that's fine, but I do this for me, not for anybody else. So if it's not suiting or not fitting with my raison d'etre, then I ain't doing it, and I'm doing it to meet somebody else's criteria. I think also with this paper's not particularly special, so it's not. I can't get any at the moment. It's a bit. Just from one of these cheap shops in the UK. It's the Poundland. Everything's supposed to be a pound. There are some things that are a pound, but there's a lot that isn't. But anyway, that's how it became notorious. Everything for a pound, which is a bit like, I think the Woolworths started like that, didn't they? Everything for sixpence or something. And so they had this paper in, these pads in, and I kind of bought everything that they had every time I went in. I'd be buying lots of them, and they're no longer stocking now. So, but it was £2.50 for 25 sheets, which is ridiculous. But great paper, ridiculously cheap. That's what I meant. I didn't mean it was expensive. Not when you're buying Strathmore and God knows what else that people recommend for charcoal. But the difference that it makes, not just in the simple application of tones, but in the way the mark flows, it's a little bit like, I like the working with the wax crayons because they glide across the surface. So that's a desirable thing for me, sort of the ease at which the thing flows. You got to think a bit more about the tonal aspect of it when it comes to the wax crayons, but and that's where it differs from this, that it requires a little bit more consciousness in terms of, and you just can't rely on the response. You got to consider, because that's what I rely on with this. It's just a response. I've said this before about, my hand is like the stylus on a lie detector. It's doing that, and it's my emotions that are driving the twitching and the marks. But when you're doing it with a wax crayon, you've got to think about the thing. You've got to press a little harder. I tell you what, it's this thing here, when I was working with this, because I had to press hard on it, the next morning, my grip, I could feel it. Whether it's old age, I don't know, but I could feel it in my grip. I don't feel it with this because I hardly grip this at all. Sometimes you'll see that it stutters because I'm not holding it tight enough as it did then. but as if to prove that. But that's the, again, one of the beauties of this. It can be such a delicate application of tone at the same time as being, if I wanted to go up a gear, it could be dark and solid. That's the thing. So you wouldn't get that with the wax crayons. So I'm kind of at a stage where I could sort of just step up the tones, but I'm always a little bit reluctant about, particularly with hair, about stepping up the tones because of the changes that it makes to the relationships of the elements of the face. Suddenly there is a more dominant component, I suppose, and it just changes the way you see things. So whereas this is just, you see the marks are a million times different. It's just, there is like I don't know, there is something about this, and it's coming off there. Look, for instance, it's almost like if I shook it, it'd all drop off. And if I'm not 100% sure of the tones, the location of things, so I'm not 100% sure, then if I commit to anything, and this is back to the not being able to remove it, and although I saw somebody the other day saying about blue tack. Now I've got some blue tack. I've never had much luck with blue tack. These putty rubbers are next to useless most of the time, but that's the paper that causes that problem. But this guy was talking about blue tack as if it was the super eraser. I'm not sure. I've got some blue tack and I've got some white tack as well. So I may have a go with that and see whether or not it'll erase as well as he said it would. As I said, I've got some and I've had a go with it, but I thought it was a bit too smudgy, a bit like this rubber I've got now, which is the claim that I've got, that these I have against these is just too smudgy. But but as I said, I'm kind of in that place now of time to step up the tones and define things a bit better, and I'd say one thing about the female faces is that it's not a rush around kind of craziness. Invariably for me, it's always it's much slower than painting or drawing a BL man. It's not that it's any less spontaneous and responsive. It's just that you respond differently to different things. And I suppose it's a good example of how that works. So you respond to a female face in a more delicate and more flowing and more. It wouldn't be the same as if it was a crusty old man. You'd be just throwing the paint around or the charcoal around and the marks around, and because that's how it would be. It would be that kind of response. Whereas with this, it's more delicate and it's more considered in terms of relevance, not in terms of whether or not this mark should be there and the rest of it. The marks are still going to be spontaneous marks. And as I get to this stage, and I'm starting now to consider the tones that I'm seeing, or responding to the tones that I'm seeing, it's even more important that the response is there. It's like a an even more intense interrogation. That's what it is. It's like it just feels even more connected, even more observed. Because there's a temptation with female face, particularly like this, which is quite a, as you can see, it's quite a shiny face. There's a temptation to smooth this and obviously, you know, to use something like this. But I kind of like this, you know, where you can see there's a breakup. I also like this kind of thing. So if I use this, if you'll see it on the side of the nose there, if I use that just to blend things in like that, it can get a little too blended for me. And I'm not you know, I'm not really that kind of art. I don't really like the blended photographic finish thing. For me, it's a little bit too I won't say daunting, but you know, when you start on something like that, it's like detail. How much detail is too much? How much blending is too much? How smooth does something have to be? You know, it's all those sort of things. And once I get in, again, it's me. It's once I get into that kind of thing, I'm away. And there are some that you've seen me do, some drawings I've done that are just blended craziness, which I can't stand them. You know, I can't stand that for that. It's just it hasn't got the freshness that the marks demand that I want from the, you know, from the drawing. So if I'm not careful, I say if I start blending, and the thing is that once you do it once, I might get away with it to some extent, but once you do it once, everything needs to. It's the tonal value thing. Once you get into defining something in a particular way, be it smooth or be, you know, a tonal level, everything has to be in line with that. So if it's dead smooth there, I feel like it needs to be dead smooth everywhere else. So as I said, I kind of try and keep away from that if I can. I don't think that I'd be happy with it if I did. Make everything smooth. before I get into the direction of the flow of things, I think I might just start to put general tone onto it, just to make it so that I can figure out whether or not the shape of everything is right, you know, that kind of thing. So So the point of that then, what I just talked about, is this. You see the width of that there. I've got to make the comparison between that, and by putting tone onto that, it just helps me see the shape better. That's all. Which is just about right. The problem I've got really is the face. She kind of tilts slightly to her left, and I think the head, as I'm looking at it, the head is amplifying that, and that's by putting the tone on here, it's helping me to see how and whether or not it's doing those things. It's also hang on. Now what I'm looking at is the position of the eye. If that wants to be a little bit more, again, up there and up there, and then to the cheek, and then down to the chin. And I think it's about right. I think the problem with it is that it just needs to go up a little bit in that corner, and then this needs to come down on this in there to get that tilt. You know what I mean? I mean, it's amplified by, or it's confirmed by things like that, which are going to, the side of the mouth drops down a little bit there. Yeah, and then this is the thing about tones. You can see, I'm hardly touching this thing, but I need this kind of tonal control in order to make these adjustments, because all these things are making the shape, or giving the shape the form, and I need to be able to do those from, with what I do. I need to be able to control the tones in that way. They're just minute things. Otherwise, it ends up like this, which is just flat. It's just flat. It doesn't have you can see the form starting to shape on this, because I've got the full extent of the tones as well. That's a full range of tones. So that's another reason why that crap paper this morning didn't work, because I don't have this kind of control. And this minute adjustment stuff that looks like nothing You know, it doesn't look like anything, but this is the kind of thing that I would spend a long time doing. Just even if the, you know, if the actual edges of things aren't quite right, or the, you know, the sort of the linear definition isn't right, or whatever, it makes no difference to me. It's that it implies the right kind of, you know, the right kind of, or it implies the right shape and the right position of things. And obviously this aspect, this tilt, this pose is what makes this pose. This is what is the emotion in this pose, is this looking longingly at whatever she's doing into whatever. She's got something on her mind by the looks of it, and that's to do with the, you know, the position in the head. And if I can't capture that, then I'm not going to capture the you know, the emotion. And I'm going to struggle with this Roman charcoal because I've got another one of those sudden changes in tone, in density. I said this morning about the tuition thing and the way people get sort of hung up on what seems to be irrelevance, and I'm afraid I'm guilty of that. I get hung up on the increments of execution. I think the trick for me, or if it's a trick, the goal for me is that it shouldn't look like I've got hung up on those things, and that it shouldn't be. You shouldn't be able to see the labour. It should appear effortless. And I still go back to that. You know, if you can see the effort, then it's craft. If you can't, then it's art. I still think that's for me, is the sort of definition. So I want to see that freshness. I want to see, even, you know, when I don't know who was talking about Sargent's portraits, and you know, they take 3 months to do and all that kind of thing. And even at the end of all that, his brush marks still look fresh, you know. And that's the goal. He was still, regardless of the effort that it took, it still needs to look effortless. That's that I would imagine that's the sign of a true artist, to be able to do that, to make effort look effortless. I'm going to move the ear slightly. That's another thing that's I'm needing to. Oh, it's tiny. It's tiny. It's like, if I'm looking at alignments, I'm looking here for it's about there as it comes in like that. It's tiny, and then I can move up the. You know, I never known what they call that bit in the middle of an ear. You know, this where the hole is bit. I know it's different every time I draw them, but I've never known what it's called. It's a bit like the thing underneath your nose. Is it this thing here? I've never known what that's called. Is septum, is it? I don't know. I think it is something like that. If I'd found out what it was, I wouldn't be able to remember anyway. I'm useless with things like that. It just goes in one ear out the other. Fortunately, appropriately, as I'm drawing an ear, goes in one ear out the other. There you go. I'm a poet and don't even know it. yeah, so this gradual adjustment thing, continual drawing thing, is for me is the I don't know if it's the hardest bit, but it's the bit that could easily end up being the work, you know. So I just got to be careful, be conscious of the fact that this is a responsive thing. Let me just try a different piece of charcoal. I'm gonna get one of these in the clutch. So I'm not a fan of using lots of different implements, you know. I think mainly because of the charcoal that I've made in the past has always been a little bit inconsistent. Even in the same batch, it would always be a different color, a different gray, you know. So I tried not to change if I could help it, unless the charcoal snapped. I try not to change, and so it's kind of stuck. I always use just the same piece if I can, one piece from start to finish. But I've seen some charcoal artists where they've got a complete array, you know, a toolbox full of different kinds of tools. Having said that, I think a lot of those are, you know, production-orientated type artists who are going to just do amazing copies of photographs, you know, very photographic in its execution. There's one or two. I mean, like the guy, is it Gorilla Brigade? I know he's got a proper name, but on Instagram he does that. I mean, his stuff is just incredible. And I would imagine sometimes it's very loose like this, and other times it's amazingly detailed and photographic and fantastically executed. And I think a bit like me, it's whatever it is, you know, it just works out that way. Apart from me spending probably another hour on fixing these tones and getting this, see, there's a shape there, and there's a shape there, and there's a shape, a bit shape there. I'm going to knock this back here, and there's all of that kind of stuff, and then bring up the hair, because I think the hair needs to be a lot darker. I've got it coming sort of down here, and there's a something. You see, I'll start pumping up the density now on this, and you'll see it needs to be that, can't you see what I mean? It needs to be that density, and then everything has to fall in line with that. So this is going to have to come up down here, for instance. So all of that wants fixing, but I don't want to, at the same time, I don't want to lose the spontaneity of it all. But you can see, as soon as I start doing that, you've got all these other issues of density in line with, that's the balance thing that needs to be fixed. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and then in turn bring up the face tones. So I'm just looking at so what I'm doing there, I'm just looking to make sure that the distance from there looks right, and the distance from there looks right, and then the way that then drops down to the corner of a chin there, and where the chin then aligns to the bottom of the mouth, it's slightly lower than the bottom of the mouth. It's there. So, but I'm always doing that. I'm always checking the alignments anyway, and the locations of things. Then I've got to sort of work on the trying to take some of the drawing out of it. If there's a definite line, a definite edge to things, it can be a problem, because and it's one of those things, a bit like the smudging of things, the smoothing of things. If it's too much of an outline around things, it will throw everything out that's more suggestive and implies, and it means that they have to come up to the definition of this with its outlines, or this will have to be broken up. No more or nothing than not, I'll just end up breaking up the line. So I sometimes call it taking out the drawing, but that's what I'll do. I'll take the drawing out of it if I can. So yeah, tonally, you can see how that has to go back there. You can see how that pops out. The ear pops out. This pops out here as well. So that has to be a lot darker. But yeah, and then trying to get the highlight on the face as it hits these. There's a few highlights there, on there, and a little one there, and one on the chin, and then there obviously in the nose, and that then gives it the sort of the substance, the presence. At the moment, it's just too bland. It's just too even, I suppose, and it needs to really start to get those subtleties. And as you can see, with the charcoal not requiring any effort at all, it's just a case of blending, just running it over top of the surface of it, and it kind of puts a thin layer of charcoal on it and blends whatever's there, and that is what the other charcoal didn't do on that paper without any effort. That's the thing, without any effort. So right, I love you and leave it. I'm going to just finish this off, and I'm going to do another one in a bit, so I'll see you later.